Okay, this is a test. I want to see if you can see me and hear me. I don't see anything come up on Facebook yet. Still nothing. Let's see if I can find Jimmy. Okay. I still don't see anything. Jimmy, you're watching, but where are you watching? I can't see it on Facebook. Uh, Hello, Sven, Jimmy. Do you see me on Facebook? I can't see it. Oh, here it is down here. Okay. All right, I guess it's time to start then. Yeah, it's online. I can start. Okay. じゃあ、こんばんは. All right. Here I am in Fukuoka, Japan. It's 9 p.m. And I'm going to start my talk about my experience over the last 42 years learning various languages, using various languages around the globe. So I just want to give you a little bit of background so you know my experience. And I want to spend most of the time interacting, get any questions that you have, deal with any comments that you have. Okay, so I had interests in languages from a very young age. I can remember, I would say around age 5, 6, 7, listening to shortwave radio. I grew up in Florida, South Florida, and I would listen to languages I had no idea what languages they were. Some I did. I could recognize quite a few, like Spanish or French or German and such. And anyhow, growing up in South Florida, we were exposed to Spanish. A lot of Cubans there at that time. Now there's many other people from parts of Latin America and other countries living in that area. And so I did start studying Spanish from a young age. And well, when I turned 18, since I had started university early, I almost had enough credits to graduate. So I left the United States and went to study in Colombia, Universidad de los Andes in Bogota. And so I was, well, in Colombia, I also studied French, Alliance Française, and German, Goethe Institute, and Portuguese at Instituto Brasileiro de Cultura. But actually, most of the study was on my own. At that time, I used Linguaphone, just very small records that you play. So that was the technology at the time, and just books. The phone calls were very expensive, of course, no internet, etc. And after studying in Bogota for a year, I took a trip around South America. starting by going down the Amazon, Brazil, and spent 3 months in Brazil. And then Uruguay, Paraguay, Argentina, Peru, Bolivia, all the way back up. And so in every country, I read literature that was famous in that country. And in Brazil, I read Jorge Amado. And I really fell in love with Brazilian Portuguese. And I have even now hundreds and hundreds of songs from the popular singers at that time in Brazil, like Maria Bethânia, Gal Costa, Gilberto Gil, and so on. And so at age 20, I went to Switzerland to study, and I studied in Geneva. It was a United Nations program. I studied in French. At that time, I also worked more in German, some on Italian. Then, after that, I took a bicycle trip in the old Yugoslavia, and I learned Serbo-Croatian and some Slovene, but mainly Croatian, Serbian. And next was graduating back at University of Florida. And I went to Poland to study Slavic literature in Poznan for 2 years. And so, of course, I studied in Polish. But I read a lot in Russian, in Polish, and some in Croatian. And I also studied Norwegian there and Japanese there. And so after 2 years, I went to Japan through Southeast Asia. And so after that, I've spent most of my life in Japan, so well over 30 years. I first came here in 1981, but I've lived in a few other places in the time between, and also I have a lot of time to travel. So I'm a professor of cross-cultural management at Kyushu Sangha University here in Fukuoka. And I lecture in Japanese, but in my seminars I have mainly foreign students. They're attracted to my class. So at times in class I'll use Nepali, Vietnamese, Chinese, Thai, and Indonesian, besides Japanese. I've studied over 30 languages. I've used 20 or so quite a lot. So the Romance languages, mainly Spanish, French, Spanish, Portuguese, French, Italian, a little bit of Romanian, Catalan. And then, of course, I can understand things like Gallego, etc. Languages, dialects of, or languages related to those major Romance languages I just mentioned. And then the Slavic languages, since I know Southern Slav, basically Croatian, Serbian, and Western Polish, and Eastern Russian. It's very easy for me to understand and combine and communicate in let's say, 9 or 10 other Slavic languages, such as Ukrainian or Belarusian or Czech or Slovak. This year I plan to spend about, hopefully at least a month working on Slovak before I go to the conference in Bratislava, so that I've spoken Slovak I've communicated with people who are speaking only in Slovak with me before. I remember doing that in Thailand in a sauna at a monastery. And so it's no problem to understand. It's just whether I speak it correctly or not. So the Romance language, Slavic language, German, Norwegian, which I also studied in Poland, which I mentioned, and traveled in Norway. And later Afrikaans. I was in South Africa twice, and I spent well over 1,000 hours learning Afrikaans before I went there the first time. Then I learned a little bit of Zulu and Xhosa, one of the click languages. And then, of course, Dutch. I can understand Dutch very well, but The grammar is more actually I say Dutch before Afrikaans, but the grammar is much simpler in Afrikaans, so my mind just wants to stick with Afrikaans. I had to force myself to try to speak Dutch. And then European language is Greek. I learned it before going to a conference 9 years ago. Spent, again, maybe 1,000 hours on it. And I had a chance to use it at the conference in 1 month, year after. It was 2008, I think. Maybe it could be 2007. And then just recently at the Polyglot conference, it was fun to be able to use Greek again. So then basically I've studied languages in Asia. If I look at total hours speaking of all languages I speak, including English, the most is Japanese because I've lived here much longer than I lived in the United States. Was basically, add-on time thereafter is 20 years maximum. And I've always lived in countries where another language is spoken, not English. So Japanese, and I studied Chinese literature here at the University in Japan Graduate School. And that was back in the early 80s, 1981. And I've taught in management in Chinese, basically negotiation, in Taipei and Shanghai at Tulane University programs, EMBA programs. And I've taught for 10 years, 2 months a year in Thailand at Chulalongkorn University. And actually, I wound up writing a book in Thai about Japanese companies in Thailand, Japanese management. Yeah. Okay, what other languages? Okay, Indonesian and Malay and Thai and Lao. So I speak Thai quite fluently, and Lao comes very easy after that. And my Indonesian is better than my Malay, but I know the differences. I know what is funny, what sounds funny in Malay if you're speaking Indonesian, and vice versa. And then Nepali and Hindi. My Nepali is much stronger because I spent much more time studying it, and I've been trekking the Himalayas over the past few years. You can look on my Facebook page and see my recent trek solo by myself to Mount Everest from the lowlands from Jiri, and before that the Annapurna Circuit. And also I have about 20 Nepali students in my seminars, so I have a lot of chance to speak Nepali. Let me see, what am I missing here? Oh, well, I've studied Arabic and Farsi back in the early 70s. Now those are two languages which I don't remember a lot of, Farsi more than Arabic. I never used Arabic that much, but I studied intensely for a while. I can still, I know the script, so I can write words in Arabic and I can read it, but doesn't mean I necessarily understand. And let me see. Yeah, maybe some languages I'm forgetting about here. Anyhow, so that's the background of some of the languages I've spoken. Maybe more will come to me later. Now, so far as studying foreign language acquisition, now my field is cross-cultural management or international human resource management. And what that means is we need to understand the characteristics of people who can function well in a foreign culture, in a foreign language. And that's a very big consulting industry to help companies find the right people. And so I teamed up with a very good consulting group composed of some famous professors in management, and I used their questionnaire instrument. I had to do some studies with Chinese students here in Japan, about 100 students to see if the characteristics of people who succeed well in a foreign culture, the same characteristics of people who are able to speak more closely like native-like speech in a foreign language. And the results were very positive. I listed and posted some of the papers I've written and on this subject and related subjects. You can find them. See if I can move this over and switch the camera here. Maybe that's okay. Okay, so you can find them here, or on the post that I had there at Academia edu. So I have 11,274 total views so far. So there has been some interest. So we have a presentation I did recently in Greece. Polygot's perspective on the age factor in foreign language acquisition. And then is a native-like accent of foreign language achievable? I did that in Berlin. And okay, so quite a few papers there you might want to take a look at. Now, let me take a look at any comments I have. Whoops, I had to change the camera. Sorry. Oop, change. There we go. So now that light above there, sorry about that. It's just the way it's set. I have to use my phone to do this, and I have to use this angle. Let me see. Okay. Well, I have some greetings here, but really what I'd like to do is to open up to any questions, because I want to talk about what you're interested in, and I've given you somewhat of background of my experience. So I want to speak from experience as well as from the more academic perspective or research perspective. Though my PhD is in cross-cultural management, I spent an incredible amount of time reading literature in linguistics, mainly applied linguistics on foreign language acquisition, or they often say SLA, second language acquisition. But I hate that title because people learn the second language. They're neophytes, and a lot of the literature, the people writing about that are often monolinguals. There are some good people writing, but some of it I didn't find very interesting. So yeah, I read extensively. I interested in many different fields, so neurolinguistics and psycholinguistics and cognitive science, and of course applied linguistics and quantum physics too, but that's not related to this, and philosophy of science and so on. Okay, so could I get any questions? よろしくお願いします, John. Okay. Yeah, you'd like to talk to me. Paul Dessou would like to talk to me in a few languages. The problem is I don't know what languages people understand here. Jeżeli mówimy po polsku, nie wiem, jest tyle ludzi, że rozumiem po polsku. That's Polish, because I know Paul Dessou. It's not his real name, because I spoke to him on Skype before. He speaks Japanese quite well. He's Polish. Yeah. In what ways has knowing other languages helped you to learn a new language? Oh, Sophia, that's a very good question. Well, obviously cognate languages, related languages. So let's go back to my first experience in Colombia, age 18, 19, learning Portuguese, French, and German. Well, obviously it was much easier to learn Portuguese knowing Spanish. I mean, there was a lot I understood without having studied anything, especially reading. The thing about Brazilian Portuguese is that the pronunciation is quite different than Castellano, or how they speak in South America, Colombiano, etc. But, for example, la gente is a gente. So the fact that words that are spelled the same pronounced quite differently, it it's hard to catch if you've never, if you don't know this. But it takes very little time to adjust to it because their patterns are regular. For example, Brazilians, if it ends in an O, they use more of an U sound. Even with the L, it's more of an U, Brazil. And yeah, so it helps between cognate languages, especially I mentioned the Slavic languages, okay? Um, First, as I said, I was learning Serbian and Croatian. They call it Serbo-Croat at that time. Before then, I had learned some Slovene. I had a friend from Slovenia I met in South America. So obviously, that made it easier to learn the related languages in Yugoslavia. And once I learned Polish and Russian and Ukrainian, was very easy to understand. Now, to speak it well, you have to concentrate, you need some practice, etc. But to understand and to make yourself understood was not necessarily that difficult if you learn to adjust in that way. Um, in the case of Ukrainian, I bought a book with CDs, and even when I went to the very last lesson, I understood 80% of the lesson without ever, looking at it, just listening to it. So yeah, and same with Thai and Lao, Nepali and Hindi. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention. Recently, what I study a lot is, and I was just studying before I started this podcast or talk, is Tibetan. And because I've been to Tibet a couple of times, because I'm trekking the Himalayas a lot, in Nepal area, there are over 100 languages. Let's say there are 10 major languages, and some of them are very closely related to Tibetan, like Sherpa, which is spoken around in Solukhumbu, where Mount Everest is. And I was learning Sherpa last year, and people really freaked out when I spoke to them in Sherpa. And then also I'm saying Tamang with with a student at my university. She's from a Tamang village, and that's her first language. And it's also related to Tibetan. Vocabulary-wise, yeah, it's not as much like between Slavic languages or Romance languages or Germanic languages. But for example, nga is the word for I, and it's the same. And you see words they're similar but have different meaning, like lasso could be good or okay. I'm listening. All right, so I've gotten off the subject a bit here. But yeah, of course, you for one thing, you have the cognate languages, languages that are related in terms of vocabulary and structure. And also, since I've studied language with so many different kinds of structure, grammar, syntax, I'm used to very different types of syntax. So if you only study European languages, um, and not Indo-European, but European, languages spoken in Europe, and not talking about Finnish or Basque or Hungarian. And I did study Hungarian, by the way. I don't speak it well, though. Then you're mainly dealing with, subject, um, subject, verb, object languages, while a lot of the languages that I've been speaking over the past 30 years have been subject, object, verb, like Japanese or Korean or Nepali or Hindi or Tamang or now Tibetan, etc. Okay. How do you include the perspective of students from nationalities and speaking different languages in your lectures? Are the students open-minded enough to always provide and enrich the debate? I have to see more on this one. Let me go over here. Oh, okay, that was it. Yeah. You mean when I'm lecturing in Japan? Well, when I'm lecturing in Japan in a big class, like 140 students, I stick to Japanese. In my seminar, we have seminars, first, second, third, fourth year seminars. Then the students choose us, and we choose the students. And as I mentioned, most of the students who come to my seminar are foreigners, not Japanese. And so in the seminar, I try to get them to interact. So I'll make comments or tell jokes in like Nepali or Vietnamese or Chinese. And those who don't speak the language obviously don't understand, but I give them a few moments to ask their neighbor to get them interested. Which other languages are SOV except Japanese and Korean? Oh, there are many. It's the majority in the world. There are more SOV languages than there are SVO. Yeah, I guess, let me see, lost who's asked that. So, this is coming from, I guess you're a native Vietnamese speaker, and as you know, then Vietnamese is an exception for that. Vietnamese, Chinese, Thai, they are SOV mainly. But that's not, it's a long explanation to explain why it's Chinese, for example, is not necessarily SOV, not all the time. It's different constructions you can use. Did you start studying languages in school? And if so, have you found it easier to study languages in school or on your own? On my own, by far. Yes, I have studied languages in school. Starting off with Spanish through primary school and secondary school and high school. But I left high school early to go to university. I studied at university. What have I studied formally at university? Let me see. Russian, Polish, German, French, Spanish, Arabic, Norwegian. That's what comes to mind right now. Greek. I went to a summer school in Crete, and basically I had to leave the class and go to a private tutor because my questions were way too much for the other 4 students in class who knew no other languages besides English. So they found my questions annoying because they really don't understand syntax. So yeah, either private tutor, and I don't like having a tutor who wants to teach me. I want to ask questions. I want to be in charge. I know what I want to know. So yeah, I'm a very independent learner. What do you think of Albania? Well, I've been to Albania. At that time, I spoke to the wonderful people I met there in Russian. In Yerevan, I had some wonderful days there. But it was the years of the Soviet Union, and of course everybody could speak Russian. And I had never studied Albanian. I wasn't going to learn it in 1 week while I was there. But it sounded like a beautiful language. I heard the syntax is a little bit challenging. Let's see what other questions I have here. How can I learn Japanese kanji in a short period? You can't. That's it. Yeah. Pritam, this is one of my students. Why are you asking me this question? Que garde chao, eh? One of my Nepali students just asked how he can learn kanji in a short period. He can already write in kanji, or you wouldn't have passed your classes for the first and second year. Okay. Did you start? I see. Did you start in school? Have you found it easier to study? Yeah. Okay. Scroll down the list. There are some more questions. How do I scroll down the list? Shoot. Yeah, Sven, thank you. I'm looking for the questions. But it doesn't allow me to scroll. Let me see. Pin comment. No, I only... Huh? Sorry, I don't see how I can do that. Shoot. Elisa. Okay. Hello, Elisa. So Elisa says, and the question is, following the question of self-study, when do you dive into speaking? How soon? Well, that really depends on the opportunity. An interesting situation with Greek was that there were no Greek speakers I knew of here in Fukuoka. And so the hundreds of hours I spent learning Greek was, okay, the teachers of Greek and books like that, and online. Also, I downloaded 120 15-minute lessons that were made in the 60s that are now online, audio with PDF files. So I got to a very high level in Greek before I ever spoke it, and the first chance to speak it was when I was on the plane going to Greece, and there was we changed planes, I think maybe in Singapore, and there was this Greek family from Australia on the plane, and the kids had grown up in Australia, and so I started speaking to them in Greek, and the parents were just got kind of angry at their children, said, "Look, he's just learning Greek now. He speaks much better than you do." Of course, they didn't want to learn to speak Greek, though they understand it. So when do I dive into it? Well, I like to speak as soon as I can. For example, let's say when I was trekking last year in going to Everest, um, in Kathmandu, I bought a book on Sherpa. And so I trek early mornings before it's rainy season. So I get up around 4 a.m. and trek just before sunrise before 5 a.m. I usually stop midday or afternoon when I arrive to the next destination. So I have a lot of time to study my book. So I start studying it and I start speaking Sherpa right away. Reading phrases I'm reading right from the book, see if they understand, see if I have to change the pronunciation, asking them for new words, etc. So, yeah, I hope that answers the question. Me neither. I pose my question, and thank you, Sven. Are there times that cognate languages hinder you in learning another related languages? You mentioned Afrikaans, which is, anyway, yeah. Afrikaans. Let me see if I can get this longer comment here. They come fast and they seem to go. Okay. Other examples? Yeah. Um, Afrikaans is much simpler than Dutch. Ek is, jou is, ons is. You don't have to say ik ben, jij bent, ons, and so on. So um, that's kind of laziness, and also I just like Afrikaans a lot. And also, it's funny if you go to Holland and speak to people in Afrikaans, the reaction you get. Okay, does it hinder? It can hinder. I think I've been doing it so long that I'm pretty good with my executive controller, which they use in cognitive linguistics. Being able to switch between languages and stay within a language. I can do that when I have a really good feel for the language. If I've developed a good cultural and linguistic identity in that language, and I've had a lot of experiences in that language, then I won't mix. Sometimes, okay, like if I'm speaking Slovak, which I've really never studied when I spoke it, I would mainly use Polish, but I would change my verbs more like they're conjugated in Croatian, because that's more similar to Czech and Slovak ways from what I was hearing. And then also, let's say you're traveling Yugoslavia, for example, and you have different, the old Yugoslavia, then you have, I, and Ie. For example, for river, you have Reka, Rijeka. So different pronunciations of it. Well, you have that all throughout the Slavic languages. So between Polish and Slovak, you're going to have certain sounds that change a certain way. So you just follow that pattern. When I get mentally or emotionally tired, then I tend to mix a little bit more. I hope I answered that. If I didn't, please come again. I wonder if I have language. Okay. I wonder if you find the order of language you learn significant. If you say one language should be learned before another to acquire it more easily. That's a tough question. I think in my case, I went with the language I had the opportunity to speak first. Okay. Well, Thai and Lao. Thai Thai is a little bit more sophisticated than Lao. Don't shoot me, Lao people. But Lao people will say it also in terms of the number of pronouns that they use and polite language. So you might want to learn Thai before you learn Lao so that your Thai is more polite. It's hard to say. Another interesting language set is Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and Vietnamese. I started with Japanese, but quickly went into Chinese as I studied Chinese literature here in Japan. So classes were in Chinese and Japanese, mainly Japanese, and reading in Chinese. Um, and then I went to Korean and later Vietnamese. Now, Korean and Japanese grammar or syntax is more or less, I would say, 90% the same. Korean phonetics are more complicated than Japanese phonetics. It's more difficult. You have to learn how to make more sounds, let's say, okay? Um, and anyhow, those three languages, Korean, Japanese, and Vietnamese, they all wrote in Chinese characters for a long time in their history and gave it up at different times. The Koreans gave it up long before the Vietnamese only gave it up about 120 years ago. So they all have a lot of Chinese vocabulary, about 50%. So maybe you learn Chinese before you learn Vietnamese, Japanese, and Korean. Uh, yeah, it's hard to say. Slavic languages. I think my combination of Slavic languages was good. I think the order isn't important, but if you want to understand almost all the Slavic languages, Bulgaria being an exception in terms of grammar and some vocabulary, then it's best to learn, I would say, Polish, Russian, and Serbian or Croatian. Like I did, that's if you want to, and then move on to, let's say, Slovene and Slovak and Czech and Ukrainian and Belarusian, etc. Yeah. That's it used to maintain all your languages. Okay. Maintain all my languages. Well, that depends on the language because I have different levels in different languages. B1, B1 level, I'd say 20 or more. Um, so what I use, I concentrate on language I'm going to use uh, in the near future. If everybody, I'm looking at the questions I have right now. So when I deal with one, if you can wait before you ask yours, otherwise I lose it here. So going back to this question about maintaining. Um, so yeah, I concentrate on, of course, the new language I'll be using and ones I already know and I'll be using. For example, Nepali. Now I've already finished a number of books in Nepali, and I can read and write Nepali, and I can watch a movie in Nepali, understand most of it. Um, but I still concentrate on it because I'm going to Nepal again, trekking 2 times this year. The Tamang Heritage Trail in March in Lantang, where therefore I'm learning Tamang, and when I don't know it in Tamang, I use Nepali, and then I said Tibetan because in September I'll be in a place called Manaslu, Tsum Valley. Especially Tsum Valley is there are people there who don't speak Nepali. Some villages, they speak a dialect of Tibetan, and I don't know how well I understand it, but I'm sure I'm pretty good at understanding cognate languages, high tolerance for an ambiguity. And I'll be going to Darfur, which is also a Tibetan dialect speaking area. So I'll concentrate on those languages that I'm going to use in the near future. Now, if I had planned to go to South Africa, then I go back to Afrikaans, and then I would take my small amount of Zulu and Nosa, can't do my click spell now, Osa, that I know, and work on that. But I also, for example, just might watch a Polish movie because I love Polish movies and I love Polish. Or I might listen to music in Brazilian or Chinese, or watch a Chinese movie. So, or Thai movie, or I might read a book in Thai. Um, if I just have a feeling for doing it, if there's no again, if I have some trip coming up, or I'm going to talk to some people in a certain language, I'll concentrate on that for anywhere from a few hours, a few days, a few weeks before I do so. Let me see. Oh, Namaskar Prem. Let me see where the question I have from India. I dare say Slovak could open even more doors than Polish. Yeah, maybe. I mean, you're a Polish speaker, so could be right. Let me see. What are the questions I have here? Sven, you're saying or Dutch before Afrikaans and French before. Yeah, I would learn French before I'd learn any Creole. Yeah, exactly, Sven. I think that's right. You want to, I think, learn the standard languages from which the Creoles come from first. That helps out a lot. And so you see in the case of Sherpa and Tamang, I'm going to Tibet, to Tibetan language first. I mean, first, I study Sherpa and Tamang, but right now I'm really concentrating on Tibetan because it's going to help me as I work more on Sherpa and Tamang. Okay, I have one here. So I have a basic one. How much time per day do you spend on activity learning a language? Do you have any tips regarding Mandarin? Okay. Well, the thing is, in my case, for the past 42 years, majority of it, at least 38 or not 39 years, I was always speaking a language other than my mother tongue, which is English. So it's constant study. Now, uh, when I'm in Japan, mainly I'm speaking Japanese, but as I said, I take opportunity to interact in Nepali, Vietnamese, Mandarin, Cantonese, Indonesian, Thai with my students, and learn Tamang, as I'm doing with one student. Tips for learn regarding Mandarin. Well, you're a Japanese speaker, so let me see. Tips. I don't know. I mean, method wise, I hesitate to talk about method because I think everybody has their own learning style and everybody has different cognitive abilities. So my strengths are listening and understanding, and I guess yeah, the spoken language, speaking and listening, and then of course reading. Yeah, I love to learn to read. Okay, to give you actually, let me see. I had that open. To give you an idea of some of the languages that I read in, I'm going to switch here. I gave this present. Oh, there we go. Camera's not switching. Switch camera. Oh, okay, now it is. Okay, I gave this presentation in Berlin. Okay, so Hindi, Nepali, the same alphabet. So Lao and Thai and Chinese and Japanese, of course, now Tibetan script, and of course Russian and Greek script, etc. Wow, also Indonesian. Okay, yeah. Chanchil. Chan, yeah, I find Thai to be very difficult to learn. Yeah, in terms of tonal languages, so I studied Mandarin first, and I thought that, okay, it was a challenge. It was my first tonal language, and then I learned Thai. And Thai tones are a bit harder, I think. They were at first. And of course, Thai has many more sounds than Mandarin does. It basically has 33 written vowels and 31 pronunciation of vowels. And and 16 consonant sounds that reduced to 6 at the end of syllables, and on and on. So yeah, Thai was much more of a challenge in terms of pronunciation, phonetics. And then I thought, okay, well, Thai is it. And then I learned Vietnamese. And Vietnamese takes the cake. I learned Southern Vietnamese and Northern Vietnamese, having spent one summer concentrating on Southern, and then taking a motorcycle trip around. Oh, sorry, the first was Northern, and then taking a motorcycle trip around North Vietnam. You can see all these trips on my Facebook albums if you like. And then the next year in Southern Vietnam, in Thành phố Hồ Chí Minh or Saigon, I'd sit in the park every day, and I'd get a big following. You can see the pictures in the album. I had like 12, 14 students come every day from all around Vietnam, wanted to study English with me, but I said, okay, we have to speak Vietnamese and English. Anything you say in English, you have to also say in Vietnamese. And yeah, so basically Vietnamese takes the cake. In terms of pronunciation, of course, there are more challenging languages, like the click languages, challenging in different ways. Okay, I can't see that one. Okay, overcoming. All right, I'm really sorry if I'm not getting all these questions in order. I see Elisa's right here. Overcoming the plateau, moving on into advanced sea levels. What do you usually do? What helps you move on rather than, well, switch to another new language? Well, it's a matter of use. I mean, since I lecture in subjects like international accounting, economics, cross-cultural management in Japanese, obviously I have to acquire the concepts and vocabulary. Okay, the concepts and the vocabulary, important to understand this link and the difference in Japanese. So I mean, it's not only advanced sea level. I'm talking about, I use words which my students often never heard of. For example, I could say ringisho, ringisedo. Ringisedo is a type of decision making in Japan. Now, people working in companies, big companies, they know the word, they use the ringi. But if you're talking to somebody who doesn't work at a company, or especially a big company, or a student, and normally they have no idea. They don't even know the character. It's a little bit complicated character for the first part, ringi. The second character is common, and the third character is common. Ringisho, ringise. So yeah, it's very use oriented. When I read in Polish literature, obviously I had to learn how to understand at a high level. Same, read a lot in Brazilian literature and Spanish, South American literature, Russian literature. I must say, though, in the case of Russian literature, I've fallen behind. I don't read as fast as I used to at all. Yeah, I stopped basically reading Russian literature 36 years ago. So I read in Russian sometime, but yeah. So overcoming plateau, yeah. So I overcome the plateau when the need's there and when I want to. But sometimes I'm not really that familiar with the levels they use in Europe. I'm not real big on taking tests and passing a test and saying, look, this is like a certificate. So I basically understand it, but okay, intermediate level. Some languages, intermediate level is fine. That's what I'm going to use. But I want to know the vocabulary and how to communicate things that are necessary for me. So, for example, when trekking in the Himalayas, even a new language like Tamang Sherpa, I want to learn how to talk about the weather and the trail and the obstacles on the trail, and quite a few phrases and things that somebody who has advanced C may not even be that familiar with. So I try to make it very practical. Yeah. me see where I'm at in questions here. Just discovered if on your laptop you open your live video in a pop-up. And you okay. All right, thank you. Okay, let me try that. All right, the pop-up now. Laptop, you open your live. Oh shoot! No, I hear myself. I gotta kill this. Oh, there's no comments here. In the pop-up, I don't see any comments. Sven, thank you for the suggestion. Let me see. It's going to full. Okay. Sven, I don't see exact when I pop up. Let me see. What's a pop? Is just making full screen, right? But when I make it full screen, all the comments disappear. Okay. Sorry, I don't see it. I'm only see these questions I just got recently. Is there a way? Let me see. No, write it. I don't want to write a comment. Sorry. Not full screen. Yeah, but how do you do it in a pop-up if it's not full screen, Sven? Sorry for my ignorance. I just don't know. Not full screen. Because I can't. I only see 4 comments, and it doesn't show where I can see the other comments. Huh. Sorry, but could people ask questions? Could you, if I haven't dealt with them, could you ask them again now? If only could explain me better. Yeah, Sven, I understand. Thank you. But I don't see it. I'm really sorry. I don't see where I can do it. Could anybody who asked a question I didn't address it, could you ask it again, please? So sorry to bother you about that. It's if I get removed, no, I don't want to do that. Pop up. No, sorry, I don't see it. I'm kind of waiting for the comment. Let me have a sip of wine here. Thanks. Okay, I have 1 hour and 10 minutes more. As I said, I have no script for this talk because I just wanted to make it interaction. Okay, good. I see this one. From John Anderson. Do you feel that technology has helped or hindered your language learning? I would say definitely helped. When I started learning languages, as I mentioned, basically it was just, records. You had to have a record player, and then there was 8-track tapes. I don't think they had those languages on those, and cassettes and such. It's quite expensive. And, of course, you had to find people who spoke the language. You had to go to the place really to speak to native speakers. You couldn't go on Skype or anything like that. And now I think it really helps me, but I wonder about the people who grew up with this technology. You take it for granted, perhaps, and don't use it to its fullest. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, it could be the case. Maybe you do take full advantage of being able to use all the different free communication programs, applications, etc., like we're using right now. But I prefer actually to travel and speak in person. So one thing about technology now is that back in the 70s I had the Walkman, the cassette Walkman, so I could put my language tapes in there and listen to them. And but you have to rewind and forward and such. You couldn't hit a button and go from one track to the other. But I use all the time. I mean, basically, I'm getting input most of my waking hours in language that's not English. Recently, I'll listen to Tibetan most of the time when I'm driving. When I'm working out at the gym, after doing yoga and weightlifting, which I don't want to listen to something that just gets in the way, I'll spend an hour on a step machine. It's very good for staying healthy for trekking. And Well, lately I watch Nepali music videos and Nepali movies mainly, but I've also studied languages on that. Um, I like to, for example, study Vietnamese and Korean, and also study Korean and Vietnamese, or say Vietnamese and Chinese. I mix the languages up. I download courses where the language is not taught in English. I think that's great. So it's really helped. Did you visit Germany? Yeah, many, many times. I worked in Germany. Yeah, ja. Ich habe in Berlin gearbeitet, ich war in Polen. Ich war ein Student 2 Jahre in Polen. Im Sommer habe ich in West-Berlin, weil gab West-Berlin in diesem Zeit. Und ich habe auch in Nürnberg und Wendelstein gearbeitet. Wendelstein ist eine kleine Stadt bei Nürnberg. So, for those who don't understand German, I was just explaining that, yeah, I worked in Germany when I was a student in Poland. I worked there in the summertime and such. Ich habe auch in Kolumbien Deutsch gelernt und auch in der Schweiz. Ich habe in der Fernsehen Schweizerdeutsch gehört. Und ich hatte Freunde in der Schweiz und habe ein bisschen Schweizerdeutsch gelernt. So now if I slowly go into Swiss German. What do I think about the German language? I mean, it's a language that's very long and how should I say? I don't know the right word. Deep history. Let's say there's a lot of interesting things written in German, especially in philosophy, and I think we have a lot of loan words from German in the philosophical field and such. So I think any language is going to reflect the culture. Please slow down on the comments here. I won't be able to see them afterwards. Um, yeah. So do I think German sounds beautiful? No, I don't. No, but I think Swiss German does and Bayerisch does. I like Southern German dialects. I think they sound beautiful, but Hochdeutsch, no, no. Yeah, I like to speak Swiss German or Frankish or something. It's better. Okay, let's see. I'm kind of missing the ones here. What was came in between? If you want to explain right now. Oh shoot, I don't see them here. Oh, I can scroll down these things. Oh, now I see it. Did you visit? Oh, okay. Wow. Fine. I can look at these on my phone now. Let me see. Okay. See if I miss any questions here. Maybe. How much time do you spend per game? Okay, let me go down because I think maybe I've answered the ones. Je parle français. J'ai étudié en français en Suisse là. Je parle français de Suisse, de Genève. C'est plus lentement que le français qu'on parle à Paris. Do you speak German? What do you think of German language? Sergio Nascimento's watching. Sergio, tudo bem? Como vai? How long do you listen to live TV? Okay, Jimmy Mello, how do you do listening? Passive or actively? Oh, you mean do I shadow? I shadow in the case of like the Tibetan that I'm listening to now. One of the texts that I have, actually, here it is here. It's learning practical Tibetan, but I have many others, like this one here, standard Tibetan, etc. But I like this one because this one's more like a phrase book. Just goes the it goes through the syntax grammar a bit, and then you have a lot of useful phrases. So yeah, I shadow those. Music sometimes I sing to. How long do you listen to a new language daily? Do I really? As I said, it depends on which language I'm preparing for. Like in Tibetan, now I'll try to listen at least 2 or 3 hours. Do you think music helps as well as podcasts? Yes, music for sure. I love music in various languages. So I had these times, in my life where my favorite language or my favorite music. So, as I've already told you, Jimmy, Português do Brasil, né? Eu gosto muito da música brasileira, né? Maria Bethânia. Eu fui a um concerto no Rio, os Doces Babros. Foi no ano qual? 84, acho. Segunda vez que eu fui ao Brasil. No Rio tem Doces Babros, você conhece? Maria Bethânia, Caetano Veloso, Gilberto Gil, Gal Costa. Ah, fantástico. Passei muito horas escutando música brasileira. So I've spent many hours listening to Brazilian music. I really fall in love with Brazilian music. And then when I was in Colombia, Colombian music too, as well as Roberto Carlos in Portuguese and Spanish. French music, a little bit, sorry, not a big fan. Polish music, yes, Ewa Demarczyk, on and on. Russian, the same. But let's see. Also, a lot of some Hungarian music and Croatian music. Zsuzsa Koncs in Hungarian. And let's see, then Chinese. Then I had my Chinese phase where I listened to Deng Li Jun or Teresa Teng for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, and listened to a lot of music. Chinese pops and Cantonese. So, but I'm now this is talking about what's popular in the 1980s. Okay, and then Thai music. Oh, then I just love Thai language. I love Thai music, and I have hundreds and hundreds of what you might say albums. I mean, download MP3 files from various singers, and I've thousands and thousands of hours of listening to Thai music, and I really think that helped my pronunciation Thai, because it's not easy. Thai is a challenging language. Podcasts. Yeah, podcasts. Yeah, listen to podcasts in foreign languages has always been helpful. I listen to a lot of the 101 series, for Korean, for example. Yeah, let's see what else we have here. What do you find here? See, yeah. Okay. I sent before writing Elisa. Let me see. Do you speak French? I already answered that one. Je parle français. In any case, intention cleared. Okay. Oh, thank you. Tulip is praising my German. I feel like shadowing. Daniel says, I feel like shadowing is the best thing you can do with your pronunciation. Yeah, I agree. It's quite good. Except if I'm driving, I have a hard time keeping up with some of the things I'm trying to shadow because there's not enough time. If it's a language tape, which it gives you time to repeat, well, shadowing, you're supposed to say it at the same time. Okay, yeah. But I want to try to say it at the same time and then fix it if I wasn't able to finish the whole sentence. I don't know, what the recommendations are for perfect shadowing. As again, I go with the methods that please me, and I modify them. But yeah, I do a lot of shadowing. Let's see. I feel like shadowing French. Okay. Do you find any merit in learning dead language or constructed languages? Okay, Paris or Paris? Which one? I don't know. Paris Downing? Oh, yeah, dead languages or constructed languages. Personally, no. Now, I actually learned some Esperanto. I didn't mention that, but in Colombia, let me see, it was French. So actively spending a lot of time in Colombia in 1974, 75. In Spanish, studying French, Portuguese, and German, but I also studied some Esperanto. And I remember the story about a fly going different people's beers, German, French, Italian, etc., and how they reacted, and on and on. But I understand why people may love Esperanto, but I'm not a big fan. And when I listen to Esperanto talk in Berlin, I can usually follow it no problem, but I don't try to speak it. No, ancient languages. I prefer the modern Greek to trying to learn ancient Greek. Um, I basically like to focus on the languages which I can use because I like to communicate with people. I like to meet new people. And if I'm trying to communicate with a Greek person, ancient Greek, they're just going to look at me strange. And for example, Esperanto. I mean, I could meet new people that way, but I don't feel like I'm really feeling the culture and the language. I mean, I want to know the culture. I'm going to know it through the language, and then you miss that. Like if I'm speaking, if I to somebody whose mother tongue is Swahili, and we're speaking Esperanto, well, that's the way. So I should study more Swahili and get to know the culture and the language better. How do your fellow Americans, family, friends perceive you? That's a little bit strange, Sven, to say the least. Uh, well, I'm an odd member of my family. Nobody in my family speaks any language except English. Um, they've always considered me a little bit odd, a little bit eccentric. Having left home at age 18 and spent most of my life abroad, and traveling like a vagabond, and also being a corporate manager at a major multinational, General Electric, and um, went to 8 universities around the world and studied 3 different masters in graduate school and a PhD. It's quite different than the rest of my family. And the friends I keep in contact from up to age 18, well, they're just very different than I am. Okay, how do you... Okay, this is from Kotib, is it? Khotib? Kotib? Khotib? How do you pronounce that? Sharman? Um, how do you keep motivating yourself learning all the language that you learn? Oh, the motivation just comes natural. I think basically I just imagine myself interacting in that language. So a good example is just recently, okay, in Nepal, I do a lot of trekking in the Himalayas. Again, uh, feel free to look at my photo albums in my Facebook page, and you can see these treks in Everest and Annapurna region, etc. And basically, for example, when I was trekking Annapurna circuit, people freak out when some, uh, non-Asian, non-Desi, Bidesi, foreigner, speaks fluent Nepali. And so as I was walking on the circuit, I'd talk to porters, and I walk alone. I didn't have a guide or porter or anything. And along the way, and they would mention the next village. I get to the next village, and they'd already knew I was coming and such. And so even just in Nepali, now when I was in getting close to Everest, and where most of the villages they speak Sherpa. And when I started communicating with little Sherpa, I knew they were just freaking out. I mean, it was so rewarding. They just, wanted to keep talking to me and ask me questions. And so it really comes from that. So I just imagine when I'm, like in Tibetan, learning to write and read Tibetan is very challenging because, for example, if you know French, there's a lot of letters you write that you don't pronounce. Well, in Tibetan, there's a good video on YouTube about this. There are, sometimes you have a main consonant. Consonants can be written before, you have a main consonant. You can write consonants before it, consonants after it, consonants under it, consonants above it. And then you have a vowel connected to it. And some of them affect pronunciation, some don't, some are silent, some are not, etc. So you can have 5 consonants and the sound will only have 1 consonant sound with a vowel. So, as you go crazy trying to learn all these rules and everything, I just think what it's going to be like when I can read the scripts that the monks are reading, and I go into a temple and I start reading with them, and the kind of reaction you get and how they feel about you. So it's a big motivation. I'm struggling with my Dutch. This is okay. So you're struggling with your Dutch. I don't know why, but I feel unmotivated recently. Well, I don't know. Motivate you, my friend. So, you know. Are you single? You find some motivation there. If you're going to the country. I mean, I've always had the chance to travel. And I realize that some people listening here, depending on, your nationality, maybe it's difficult to get visas, maybe saving up the money in your currency to travel is difficult. I was very fortunate in this case, being from, the U.S., having a U.S. passport. Um, by the way, I left the U.S. also because I'm very much on the left side of politics and socialist issues. That was the end of the Vietnam War. That was another thing besides just wanting to adventure. So don't associate things that you don't like about the U.S. with me. Uh, Struggling with your Dutch, I don't know. I mean, if I like a language, I'm motivated. Again, I just told you things that motivate me. You are great. Do you speak Arabic? Aloha Ria. Oh, maybe you missed the first part of my talk. I said I can. I studied in '74 Arabic, and I've been in Tunisia, Algeria, and Morocco. But what happened was when I started speaking Arabic, people just speak to me in French, and I speak French. I was studying French in Switzerland at the time, and so actually my Arabic there's basically very few languages where I can't carry on a decent conversation of the ones I studied, and Arabic is one of them. But but if you tell me to write something in Arabic, alo Arabiya, okay, I can write it. So who asked that? Khotib, kho. Let me see. Kho. Maybe Tib. Khotib. Okay. Shar. Man. So I can write it, read it, but can't speak it. Okay. Oh, you. Milano asked that. Oh yes, Kotib is single. Single. Okay, just imagine going to the country and making some new friendships. Do you speak Arabic? We do speak. Yeah, I know you speak Arabic in Algeria. I said when I was there, I did speak some Arabic. Okay. When I was there, we're talking about 1979. Okay, so so 37 years ago, and I was driving on a motorcycle that I bought in Poland, a Czech motorcycle, as a matter of fact, CZ 350, and yeah, I mean, I yeah, I know the languages spoken in that Arabic, and then get to Berber and other languages in Morocco, etc. And I could read the signs, and I read things, and I spoke Arab to a certain extent, but I've forgotten most of it. I haven't gotten really back to it. But I do, since I spent such long time, many hours studying it in '74, I do remember how to write and read. But it doesn't mean I understand everything I read. Okay, cool. You're from Algeria. Salam alaikum. Salam alaikum. And also it's interesting. Let's talk about Arabic a little bit here. I know the phrase, salam alaikum, but it always puzzled me why people would always say to one person salam alaikum. If it were a man, actually, grammatically in Arabic, in traditional, in what do you call it, standard Arabic, it would be alayka, salam alayka. If it's female, it would be salam alayki, right? So I never understood why they use the plural alaykum when it could be alayka, alayki. Okay, okay. Thank you for offering to teach me Arabic. When I get back to it, I'll take you up on it. I concentrate on languages that I'm going to use in the near future. In March, I'll be on the Tamang Trail in Nepal. So Nepali and Tamang will be the main languages. Also, I'll be using Tibetan villages in the area, and then Tibetan and related dialects also in August. So besides dipping into Slovak before I go to the conference in Slovakia, so that I can actually study Slovak instead of just being able to understand most of it. I've already listened to the CDs, and I've gone through the whole Teach Yourself book, listening to it all, and I understood it 80-90% of it, but I can't, I don't remember how to change my knowledge into active speaking without relying on Polish or Croat or etc. Just speaking on the fly. Okay? Let me see. You can read the Quran. Okay, great. I have more here. John Anderson. Where can we find resources and books for languages like Nepali and Tibetan? Are they difficult to find? Okay, so far as Nepali is concerned, let me see, in English, I think you're talking about, because see, I also use books in Japanese. For example, this is Tibetan and Japanese. Nepali. Teach Yourself is really the only one I've been able to find. It's a pretty good course. This is an older one. I've done this book about 20 or 30 times, and just reviewing it and trying to remember the finer points. And you know what happens is when you know the grammar well, I find it hard to stop myself from correcting people in Nepal. I don't mean what I mean. What you have to understand that Nepali is not the first language of everybody in Nepal. Maybe 50%. And okay, so sometimes I want to correct them, or sometimes the vernacular, just like in English, or any language, it's not necessarily the standard, what people are speaking all the time. And since I study the standard, I feel like I want to correct them. Tibetan. Okay, here's colloquial Tibetan. This is also pretty good. I say pretty good. I don't like the sound on it so much. The dialogues are okay. The dialogues are written in Tibetan, which I don't like books which don't use the original script. Okay, and this one does. So it only gives it to you in Tibetan, if you can see the Tibetan there. Oh, is it? Oh, there it is. I don't know if I can get in focus there. Okay, well, it gives you the Tibetan script, and then unlike other colloquial textbooks, it gives you the transliteration, based pronunciation in Roman letters all throughout the book. Why? Because Tibetan is just so damn hard to read. Okay, you have to remember what you pronounce, what you don't pronounce, how a letter connected above or below affects the pronunciation, the tone, etc. Okay, so yeah, this one's so book. So again, we have colloquial Tibetan, Teach Yourself Tibetan, Learning Tibetan, Manual Standard Tibetan. You can find things online, like the alphabet, just to start learning the alphabet. Yeah. So Tibetan, a whole lot. Nepali, not as much. I have in Japanese, I have in Nepali. But what I use in Nepali, like here's one of them. I buy books to learn English in Nepali. Okay. And so once you learn how to read Nepali, Devanagari, it's not so hard. It's a beautiful script, for Hindi and Nepali. Not only it's actually the most used script in the world in terms of number of languages that are written this way. Once you learn how to read it, you can buy a textbook in the country in Nepal, and for learning English or whatever language that that it's teaching in that language, and then you have many sample sentences to learn. So in that sense, there's a lot in Nepali once you learn how to read, and once you've gone through a book like this and you know the grammar, or you can learn Japanese and then study Nepali with this book. This is a good series. It's quite cheap in Japan. I have it for around 30 languages. Yeah, let me see. Yeah, okay. So coming back about Assalamu alaikum, to be formal. Okay, so what you're saying is just like in a number of languages, like German, etc., quite a few languages, the second person plural is more formal. Yeah. Yeah, it's good. A good response. That's it, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, so you wouldn't say salam alaikum, salam alaiki. Okay. Shukram. Let me see. Do I have any more questions here? I don't know, folks. Maybe if I go up this way. I think I've covered most of the questions. If you have more, just keep coming. I'm going back to 50 comments or so. Okay, I don't think I got them all. Let's see. I'm just scrolling up on the comments, trying to see which ones I might not have gotten. Because I don't see any new ones right now. I suppose, let's see. 40 minutes if you want to keep talking. Okay, okay, I got yours there. You mentioned, yeah, Sven. I see yours again about language interference there. And Afrikaans in Dutch. Yeah, I let Afrikaans hinder my Dutch, but it's just being lazy. Don't have to do that. Let me see. And the other language help you learn a new language. What examples? Okay, I think I dealt with that one, Sophia. Yeah. Okay. Scroll down to the last one. Whoops, sorry. The last thing I have here. Oh, okay. Do you like learning a new language with materials, books, and your less well-known languages, Elisa? Yeah, I want to get any materials I can get. Tamang is real tough. There are no books in Tamang. You can. I have, for example, I have this that I bought in Nepal, $1. Great phrase book, and so it's just phrases. So it doesn't discuss the grammar or anything, and not all the phrases are that useful. For example, she helped gravel this road, purchased 25 electric poles, bought grants from District Development Committee, eradicated caste-based untouchability. Consequently, we have no caste-based hierarchy including touchability and untouchability in this village. Now I know how I can learn how to say that here, this phrase book in Limbu, in Rai, in Newar, Tamang, and Gurung. Of course, it has some simpler phrases at the front, but so you have to parse through this and then figure out the grammar to a certain extent. But then I went to academic papers and I found a thesis on Eastern Tamang, grammar of Eastern Tamang. You have to understand there's a lot of dialects. So at school university I'm learning from a student who speaks Western Tamang. I have another student in my class who speaks Eastern Tamil, but it's not his native tongue, but he speaks pretty well. And so I'm learning the grammar from Eastern Tamang, and also it's related to Tibetan grammar. It's a lot of things which just make sense. And for some reason, there's some, maybe it's just being next to the language, there's a lot of similarities with Nepali syntax. The frustration of learning a lesser well-known language, or less well-known language, is finding material. Sherpa, I have just one book that I mentioned that I bought in Kathmandu before I started walking to Everest. But since then, I've found more on the internet. Again, they're usually very scholarly papers, but they, about tones, about certain areas of syntax. So you don't get a lot of real common phrases from it, but you can get to understand the syntax and pick up new vocabulary. Really, you have to create your own textbook in these languages to a certain extent. And then there are, tens and tens of other languages in Nepal which don't even have this. But so far as the language spoken in Nepal, I'm going to continue, of course, Nepali, Sherpa, Tamang, and I want to learn Gurung, and then maybe in the future Rai and Limbu, all of which at least have 100,000 speakers, some much more. How about Indonesian? Do you interested of learning it? Okay. You didn't listen to the first part. Saya bisa bicara bahasa Indonesia. Saya pergi ke Indonesia bermain selancar di Bali. Sudah pergi ke Jawa, Sumatera, lain-lain. So also I like Indonesian music, yeah. And let's see. Okay, I'm running out of questions. Thank you. Another one-time management language learning. What time is it? 10:24. Oh, I got to 11. 10:24 Japanese time. So I have 36 minutes left here. Again, send me some questions you have, because I really just don't. I want to address questions. Because I really didn't. As I said, this talk is about my experience in terms of learning and using languages around the globe. Plus, it can be about my academic study of cognitive linguistics, applied linguistics, and also the cultural side, cross-cultural communication management. Okay, no, I heard that one. Okay. Have you ever played with any Turkish language, Uyghur or Turkish? I really want to learn Turkish, and I've only studied, just a few hours before going there. And I want to study. Oh, slow down on the comments, please, so I can get them. Oh, I guess I can scroll later. That's fine. Yeah, Turkish language is on my list. So maybe it's gonna be once I retire, in about 6 years. I have to retire at 66 from the university, and I'll have more time to spend time in Turkey, and it's a little bit of unrest there. We're just in Turkey, coming back from Greece. My wife is a little bit concerned about being there, but make it better in the future. But I also want to, learn, Azerbaijani and Turkmeni and related languages, Uzbeki and such. I've been to those areas. I've been all throughout the old Soviet Union. I've been to Azerbaijan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, let me see, Georgia, Georgia, Armenia. Yeah, maybe I'm missing one or two there. I've been all throughout there. But I love, I really want to, and Turkish music I love. I don't understand it, but I love it. So yes. Okay, so wow, that must be super hard. I'm not sure what you're talking about there. If I should start North Sami, there are less resources. I see, but more in my area than in many places here in Finland. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to learn North Sami, I guess Finland's going to have the. Finland and Sweden would have the most resources. But again, a lot of it's on the internet. So just, go to Google Scholar to do your searches, not just a general search, but Google Scholar. And you're going to find it in Google Scholar, and then you find out who are the people who write about it, and then you can always contact them by email. I contact academics all the time, and I answer people who contact me. I mean, I've debated with a lot in linguistics with various academics, and some very famous ones, because I have a very different opinion on a lot of things. But yeah, you have to go to the academic channel. Go up there in the snow and enjoy learning with the reindeer too. I'm a learner of English language. My native language is Arabic. I learned a lot of vocabulary of English, but I find some kind of difficulty in using it. Any advices? Any advice? Okay. Difficulty in using it. Practice makes perfect, right? Listening, I would say. It's very important for me, okay? For me, listening. Listening, but understanding. Okay, a couple types of listening. One is the listening just to tune your ear. So maybe you don't understand that much. You're watching a movie in the language, and from the context, you're catching a lot of words here and there. But just really can't follow the dialogue that well. Another type of listening is like, you take a, teach yourself book and it has a CD with it. So you have time to look and understand everything that you're going to listen to, even though, you'll forget what it meant. Well, you repeat this over and over and over and over again, hundreds of hours. And then it's easier to do that more difficult listening, such as in films and documentaries and things like that. Context always helps. So, for example, in some languages, I can understand the news better I can in a movie, because if I know the context of the news at that time, or even about economics and politics and things like that. Okay, let me see. What else comes here? Do you have any kids? I have 2 kids, but they're 27 and 28 now, and they're native Japanese speakers, and the younger one is native-like English speaker, but he makes certain mistakes at times, which are non-native-like mistakes. But actually, he is very high level. Like in TOEFL test, he almost has a perfect score. Same in the TOEIC test. So I mean, he's advanced. He's writing academic papers in English. I correct them afterwards, and I also co-author with him. He writes about renewable energy. He's a PhD student at Kyoto University, one of the top universities in Japan. In his 4th year, he was in Paris. At the time, was it the International Energy Agency? Sorry, I forget the exact name. And now he's with UNCTAD in Fiji for 6 months, and then he'll finish his PhD next year. So his main language is Japanese and English, and then of course Itoshima Ben, the dialect that we speak here. He's very good at that and loves it. I can speak it okay. I understand it. It's not what I normally speak. And he also studies Spanish, and he did okay for a while. Went to stay in Costa Rica a little bit too for a summer. Hindi, he started learning Hindi, and we were speaking. I was teaching him Hindi when we were trekking together, and we trekked in Ladakh, which is just below Tibet, over 5,000 something meters, and to show that being young is not necessarily an advantage, depends on a number of factors. He felt like he was dying on the second day over 5,000 meters, and I had to sort of drag him down the mountain. And the older one has no interest in languages, and speaks Japanese and gets by in English, no problem understanding a film or carrying on a conversation with you more or less about anything, but you immediately notice he's making mistakes. Yeah, that was the answer to that one, Sven. And my wife is Japanese. The question is it okay? I see Elisa's now. Thank you. Oh, another question asking as a teacher, does a motivated learner need a teacher at all? No, I don't think so. Or all one needs is a good textbook and a native speaker to practice? Yes, I think so. Or at the end of the day, a teacher can be of use to any learner. If yes, how? Well, okay. I really think it depends on the person. How autonomous they are in their learning. And the more languages you know, the more you can be a independent learner, autonomous learner. You can develop that ability. So keep in mind, 42 years I've been doing this. And I think, a lot of people in the polyglot community have some amazing polyglots. Like I met Richard Simcott, a number of years ago. We Skyped together, spoken dozens so languages together. But Richard's, a lot younger than I am, and so a lot of the other polyglots know quite a few languages. So I'm really impressed. I've had more time, Basically, like I've 1.5 to 2 years, or sometimes. Sometimes I have a couple new languages in a 1 or 2 year period, depending on my needs. But okay, getting back to what I'm saying is the experience, So if somebody doesn't have experience teaching themselves, no, But if somebody speaks a number of very different languages, like let's say they speak Spanish Spanish and French or Portuguese, and then German, and then Polish or Russian, and then Thai, and Japanese and Hebrew, and Swahili. You know, a great variety of languages. Even if it's only like, oh, excuse me, even if it's 8 or 9 or 10. Okay, a variety of languages. They're already going to understand so much about, structure and such. So I think they can figure many things out on them by themselves. And I do like to have a teacher, but as I said, I don't want the teacher to prepare a lesson for me necessarily, unless I ask for a certain lesson, like how to use such and such. I like to ask questions. So that's how I am. Some people like the classroom. I don't. Yeah. Did I address that one well enough? Elisa, if not, please come back again with it. Okay. Let's see what it must be. Okay, my language seems to be too bookish. Oh, okay. I guess you're talking about English. Well, that's okay. I mean, you pick up the slang as you go around, and I wouldn't, every generation has a way of speaking a language, and I refuse to talk like, let's say the present generation of teens, or even, stretching into 20s and 30s. Some of the things they say just sound so ridiculous to me, like when something's good, oh, that's sick. Oh, shut up. And that's a compliment. That's positive to me. It's stupid. Of course, it's that way in every generation. My generation at that age was cool, man, far out. What's far out? Is it really that far out? Wow, man. From the stoner generation, from the 60s and early 70s. So, anyway, bookish is fine. You can pick up and choose the local lingo the more practice you have. Okay. Okay, Thomas, you had a problem with your alphabet here. The Cyrillic alphabet? You mean Cyrillic alphabet? Thomas, could you come again on that? Я знам русский, говори по-русски. Я читал много по-русски, когда я был в Польше. Я занимался русским языком в университете, там, в Познании. Кириллицу. Кириллицу. Окей, окей. Да, понимаю. Да. You're welcome. How do you pronounce your name? God. Алиса, вы русские? Да, вы русский, вы говоришь по-русски. Я знаю, как вы говоришь по-русски. Где живете? Okay, waiting for a new one here. Is there any language you'd like to speak? Okay. Yeah, you're writing English and Cyrillic. Okay, you seem to know it. Laughing. Okay, yeah. Of course. I mean, look, Cyrillic alphabet, and I must say though, когда я польский, я читал по-русски, но я читал шибче, но сейчас нет. I slow down in my reading of Cyrillic, if you don't read it recently. But again, I mean, it's relatively easy. Try Tibetan or writing in Japanese or writing in Chinese or writing in Thai or writing in Lao. I mean, just no comparison. Just especially Japanese. Okay. I mean, in Berlin, I spoke about that. If the hardest language to write is Japanese, followed by Chinese, and I've argued about this, but my point is, I don't want to get in this argument unless somebody brings it up. But yeah, so my list was the hardest to write for me. What I know, Japanese, Chinese. Of course, I've used these the longest, and so Thai, writing in Thai. But I wrote the book, it was edited, and I had to read the whole edition again in Thai. Okay, so yeah, Lao, these. they're relatively not that difficult. Again, Tibetan is real tough because there's a great video on YouTube why it says it's the toughest language to read. Again, I don't agree with that. I think Japanese and Chinese are more difficult, but Tibetan is a real challenge. The Hebrew alphabet. You know, the interesting about the Hebrew alphabet, I haven't studied it yet, but I've learned some Hebrew. And okay, Sababa. Let me see, where's my Hebrew book? Okay. And then when I started looking at the text, even and then I listened to the sound, and I didn't study the alphabet, but I could see how it was written and understand immediately, because from Arabic you also have an aleph sound, and you you don't have to write the vowels. You can, children and such, and this I could follow it. I mean, I think to be able to read, not necessarily understand everything in reading, the Hebrew alphabet, if I put my mind to it, give it 4 or 5 hours, then practice a couple of days, that's no problem. Oh, yeah, so now you want me to try it with this. Hey, Lee, is the first one Lee? No. Thank you, Alisa. I would need the sound and then follow it, not being able to produce the sound from it. Let me see. No, I don't get it. For me, it seems super difficult. Which one, Thomas? Hebrew? Yeah. Where are we at in time? We got 20 minutes. I hope this is still staying interesting for you. Hebrew. Super difficult to learn to read. Was different. I'm telling you, I mean, super difficult. It's just no comparison. If I tell you you're gonna have to learn 48 letters of kana, hiragana, katakana, so 96 letters, and then I tell you you're gonna have to learn 2,000 kanji just to read some basic things. Like when I'm lecturing in economics and about accounting and management and psychology, and just so need much more than 2,000 kanji. And I read Chinese literature. No, it's just no comparison. Once you learn to read and write Chinese and Japanese, there's not going to be anything that's that great of a challenge. And now that I'm doing Tibetan, I know for sure that learning to read and write Tibetan, the letters aren't hard to write, so know what to pronounce, okay? Because they write like they wrote 1,500 years ago, even though the pronunciation's changed. They never reformed it because they always wanted people to be able to read the old scripts, or the old literature, scrolls and such, religious writings. Okay. Wouldn't be, yeah. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean this as a test. No, it's okay, it's cool. Yeah. Okay, people still around? I see a couple people here. There's 20 minutes. I can keep on going, or I can pull the plug if I'm being boring. So, because again, I didn't have anything formal planned here. Yeah. Okay, so the voweling system isn't easy. Yeah, you have to know the vowel. Plus, I've heard Hebrew speakers don't use Nikud because they know the words already. Yeah, of course, right. So they don't need it. They know what the word is. So why write the vowels? Yeah. But it's not a vowel language. It's a consonant heavy language. So you could never do that in Thai, where you have 31 vowels and 33 written vowels, 31 different pronunciations. So very central to a language like Thai, but from Semitic languages, Arabic and Hebrew, the vowels don't play that important of a role. Actually, they don't in Tibetan either. I mean, you have the sound in ah, and you have e and e and u, And that's it. Okay, I'm waiting for more input here. Do I know any conglings? Yeah, Esperanto. Yeah, I dealt with that one earlier. Um, and I said I'm not a real fan of conlings. And I did learn some Esperanto in '74. And when I went to conference in Berlin, listened to Esperanto at the Polyglot gathering in Berlin, listened to Esperanto talk. I could follow it, but again, I I understand why some people really like Esperanto. I'm just not into it. Wouldn't why all those languages wouldn't be? No, you wouldn't less languages be enough? It's my lifestyle. You see, Giuliano, you have to understand. When I say 42 years of studying languages, and then more if you consider that studying Spanish before I was 18, I've used these languages. I've never studied a language that I haven't used. I mean, even Arabic. My intention was to use it, and as I was studying it, I actually had two tutors, two beautiful twin girls from. They're Coptic Christians, and they had immigrated to the U.S. And actually, their mother is Russian. I met her in New York. We were down in Florida, and I practiced with them, quite a lot. And so, yeah, I use it, but my intention was to use it traveling in the countries, and I spoke about this earlier. Yeah, in North Africa, I just wound up using French because my Arabic, wasn't high enough level to, you know, get by-in, and everybody could speak French. So I've never studied a language that I wasn't going to use. So I've been to over 100 countries, and a lot of my life, the first 31 years, from age 18 to 31, I went to 8 universities around the world and traveled most of the time when I was in class. So I've used them all. That's why. Do I know Finnish? Moi. Suomi. No, I don't. I've never been to Finland. If I was planning to go to Finland, I might learn Finnish. It's a tough one in terms of getting used to all the cases and such. Um, of course, I love all languages, so yeah, I'd like to learn, but it's not high on my list. As I mentioned before, somebody asked about Turkish. The Turkish languages are high on my list. Higher before then is working on the languages spoken around the Himalayas, because I'm in love with trekking the Himalayas. I like to be on the roof of the world. So it's a matter of need. Well, not just need. I mean, you could get by in English in a lot of places, but not necessarily much in Asia. People overestimate that. Um, but it's a need for me because I want to know the culture, and also, knowing the language and culture, and that I write about cultural adaptation and such. So I have to experience it to really write about it well. If it's always good if we speak the language from where we are, from where you're going to, from where. Yeah, I think it's really great to speak the language of the country you're visiting. Hungarian is tougher than Finnish, though. Could be. Um, yeah, Communist Hungarian is tougher than Finnish. Yeah, from the Hungarian I know. I studied Hungarian in Poland for about 6 months with a Hungarian student that was there, but I was concentrating more on a lot of phrases, and so I really didn't get that deep in the grammar. I don't know if I can remember like a tongue twister. Kalmen kalösközeppen ket kinai katono kilo ket kilo kukurica kosha kalkoki, or something like that. Something. Okay, what about Slavic languages? Yeah, you're late to the conversation. Yes, I started with Southern Serbian Croatians from Slovene. I lived in Poland for 2 years, and I studied Slavic literature there. Ja czytałem mnogo po-ruski, też po polsku, когда я в Польше. Czytam też po chorwacku, tak dalej. Okay. Yeah, Slavic language. I mean, basically, since the southern and east, western Polish and eastern Russian. If I spend time working on particular Slavic language, I can get to a very high level quite quickly. I could turn on the video from any of the Slavic languages except Bulgarian and follow it pretty well. Pratar du svenska? Nej, jag pratar inte svenska, men jag förstår. Det är inte så svårt att förstå. För det jag lärde norsk. Nå, ju det var en student i Polen. I don't know how much Swedish. I was trying to speak Swedish there, trying to change the Norwegian to Swedish. Yeah. How's that? Let me see. Everyone both in Poland and Hungary knows the phrase. Lengyel magyar. Két jó barát. Yeah. Magyar long set on. That's good reason for going to Hungary a number of times. 100 console, okay. Yeah. Anybody up? Okay, I'll have some wine. I'm going to hang in here 10 more minutes. Go my full 2 hours. Paul DeSouza asked me if I know Polish. Do I know it in Polish, or do you ask? What do you ask? Do you know it in Polish? So, what? You mean this? Lengyel. Lengyel is Poland. Yeah. Magyar. Két jó barát. I mean, do I know how to say that in Polish? Nie wiem, co to jest po polsku. Proszę. What language are you learning now? You're a little bit late for the conversation on that. Most of my time, Tibetan and Sherpa, which is spoken in Solokhumba area mainly, in Sikkim also, where Mount Everest is, and Tamang, also another language of Nepal, where I trek a lot. Besides communication with people, what can you do with these languages? I mean, in terms of making a living out of it, do you support people living? Oh yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be able to do the work I do if I didn't speak these languages. I teach management. I'm a professor of management, but I teach in Japanese. I've also taught in Chinese in Shanghai, in Taipei. I wouldn't have got the job if I didn't speak and teach in Chinese. I've taught in Thailand. Yeah, I've also done translation from English to from Japanese to English. I did. Let's see. Last year was a big project. I don't do a lot of that unless it's really good paid. I did a project, worked hard for 2.5 months for €50,000. So yeah, I did some of the languages. Yeah, I was a corporate manager at General Electric. I wouldn't have gotten the job if I didn't know a number of languages, because I was handling Japanese clients and also going to countries in Europe, etc. So yeah, all the jobs when I worked at Westvaco Paper Company and marketing manager in Tokyo, and I had to speak Japanese all the time, calling on the customers. So I haven't, as I said, like I made €50,000 a year ago in translation, but besides that, there are times maybe I make a couple $100,000 a year in translation, but never my full-time thing. But even when I was in corporate life, in big companies, I was hired. One of the reasons I was hired for a specific job was my language ability. So it's like a combination. I think it's hard unless it's a translator or interpreter or something like that. It's hard to monetize your ability in languages. Just focusing on the language itself, but if you're in business, if you want to teach like I do, and I'm lecturing in the local language, Japanese, yeah. Let me see. Okay. Polak Wenger. Yeah, Magyar, Lengyel. Yeah, I know. Okay. Makedonski. Не мога да говорим на македонски, но мога да говорим на српском, на хрватском и dva bratanki are not very grammatical. Yeah, it's not. Oh, wait a second. You're Japanese. Okay. You're not Japanese. I see. Are you Macedonian? Okay. Sorry, I couldn't see your picture very well there, and I thought that um, maybe you're Japanese, but Dragana is not Japanese. Eu falo português. Você de onde é? Do Brasil? Juliano. Estou dizendo, quando eu estive no Brasil, eu leio muita literatura brasileira, como as obras de Jorge Amado, Capitais da Areia, Gabriel Cravo e Canela, Bahia de Todos os Santos, tudo isso. Eu gosto muito. E estava falando como eu gosto muito da música brasileira também. E também eu fiz um podcast em português com Jimmy o outro dia, nessa semana. Mas foi difícil às vezes, porque nos últimos quantos anos? 35, mais que isso. Porra, 30 mais anos. Não tenho muita oportunidade de falar português. Mas ainda lembro. Palescata. Yeah. You know, I understand it. I started studying it. You know, I don't think I can just start speaking Catalan now. Palo Catalan. But when I was trekking again last year up to Everest, I ran into some people from Barcelona, and I just told them, speak Catalan, don't speak Castellano with me. No quiero hablar Catalan, quiero escuchar Catalan. And as they spoke it, then I started speaking it. But I can't just start speaking Catalan because I really never had that much practice. But I used to listen to Raimon. Maybe you know Raimon, a famous singer. And so I got into it some back then. Ja, je snakker norsk, så det er litt prat, det. Varför det är en man som inte visste norsk i Polen var det en student i Polen. There was a man teaching Norwegian in Poland, so I studied it. And I think Norway is a very beautiful country. Notice I didn't say more beautiful than Sweden, but just imagine, you know how beautiful Norway is, yeah? And also, I think if you learn Norwegian, it's easier to understand Danish and Swedish, yeah? Because there's bokmål, yeah? So written norsk. Nej, nu norsk. Men bokmål. Det är inte så vanskelig att förstå dansk och svensk, ja? Kanske det är lite vanskelig i Sverige att förstå norsk. It doesn't happen often that two completely different languages use the same saying. I see. Okay. Well, I've never seen such between Nihongo and Zhongwen. I see. They're coming. A Norwegian teacher in Poland. You're just born under a bright, lucky star. Maybe. Also, there's a Japanese teacher, Hashimoto, there. And that's when I started studying Japanese at Adam Mickiewicz University. Okay, it's going to run out of time in 4 minutes. Anything else? Just about to close up? Okay. Let me see if there's anything here. Okay, drop it down there. Oops. Oh, shoot. How do I get back to this? Oh, sorry, my screen, I messed it up here. I'm trying to... Okay, no, I see it. All right. Well, I don't see any more questions. And do you mix? Do I mix languages? Sometimes. Yeah, that's a long discussion. Okay, I think that's about it. I appreciate those of you who have posed the questions and those of you who have had interest to listen to me and who will listen afterwards. Okay, finally, do you mix language if you speak with someone who understands it and feels that the perfect expression of your thought? Oh yeah. Sometimes if I'm speaking, you mean do I switch between languages? Do I code switch? Yeah, I code switch all the time, like especially Japanese and English. Not because problem of understanding, just it's easier. What's it's easier to say it in one language than another. Um, and if you're talking to a polyglot, and if you share like a dozen languages together, switch between them sometimes in that sense. Okay. Yeah, okay, thank you everybody. I'm gonna sign off now. Yeah, okay, tack ska du ha. Yeah, väldigt bra. Okay.